So you decided that you want to get into DCS, but you're not exactly sure where or how to get started? Don't worry, I'm here for you. Alright, so in this video I'm going to show you how to get DCS, talk about the computer specs you need, picking your first aircraft, do you need the latest and greatest HOTAS setup to be any good, do you need the Super Gucci Pimax Crystal VR headset, and other common questions. I'm going to assume since you're already watching this video that you know what DCS is, but if not, here's a quick summary. So DCS is short for Digital Combat Simulator, which is a highly realistic combat aviation sim that can be played for both single player and multiplayer. This is not the average arcade simulator like War Thunder. This is a study flight sim that aims to give you the closest one-to-one experience to what the real aircraft is that you're flying. Some militaries actually use this as a cost-effective training aid for their pilots. You can take to the skies an aircraft from different eras. If you want to fly an F-16 and go Mach Jesus launching missiles at other aircrafts, you can. Or you can drop warheads on foreheads. If that's not your speed, you can slow down to fly a Spitfire and shoot down BF-109s over Normandy. Or, if you're like me and want to fly fast and near as possible to the ground, hunting tanks in an attack helicopter, that's also an option. There's also ground units such as tanks, APCs, and mobile SAMs as well. And I guess if you just want to fly around on autopilot like it's Microsoft Flight Simulator, you can do that as well. Whatever floats your boat. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to mention, there's boats too. Okay, and before we get to the rest of the video, a quick word from today's sponsor. Part 1, how to get DCS. So there's two ways to get DCS. The first one I'm going to show you is what I prefer, and that's going to be the DCS website. Go to Downloads, DCS World. We're going to click this first one here, click Download. Notice that says file size is 12 megabytes, but the recommendation is 500 gigabytes. Don't worry about that. The next portion of this video is going to go over PC specs. So you're going to click Download, and you get the download folder. I'm not going to do it because I already have DCS. Okay, so the first benefit to using this method is the free-to-play program with the trial system. So the trial system, you can try any module for 14 days for free, and then for whatever reason you didn't get that module, 6 months later you can revisit that module and try it again for 14 days, and you just keep doing it. So say you're on the fence about buying a module and you don't know if you want to spend the money on that module, you can play for free for 14 days, and then, like I said, if you didn't get it, you can revisit it and play it again for 14 days. Alright, next is going to be the miles reward system. So every purchase you do through the DCS website, you earn 10% back in rewards points, which are called miles. Every 1,000 miles you have is $1 back in rewards, and these rack up the more you buy modules. So say you have 40,000 miles, you have $40, which can be used towards other modules. Say there's a sale going on and a module you want is $30, you could get that module with just your miles. Speaking of sales, there's always constant sales going on through the EDE, so right now it seems like there's a sale going on every 2 months, so there's a lot of possibility for good discounts. Okay, so the second method of getting DCS is going to be through Steam. So I never used DCS with Steam, so I have zero experience with this, but the benefits for using Steam is going to be that all your games are in one hub, the game has auto updates, and there's better customer support. The downside for using Steam, so it always seems like they're late to the sales. Not exactly sure by how much, but whenever there's a sale going on, it always seems like there's a Steam user asking how long till the sale applies to them. There's also no trials program, so you can't test a module for free for the 14 days, so either you buy the module or you don't. Special note, so if you are using Steam and decide to go to the DCS standalone route, which is the website route, you're able to transfer all your DCS Steam purchases over to standalone, but you cannot do DCS to Steam. Okay, so part 2, computer hardware. So you don't need the latest and greatest high-end parts to play DCS. If you're not sure if your computer can handle running certain things, look at the module recommendations. Some are more than others, but this is a good place to start if you're not sure. So now this is where we get into the parts that you should focus on for DCS. I'm going to list the parts that I have so you get a rough idea on what works. My full build will be in the description of this video. Starting off with the CPU, as this is one of the most important things, as DCS relies heavily on the CPU at the time of this recording. Next is going to be RAM, so 16 gigabytes is going to be the bare minimum. This will work for single player stuff or very small multiplayer lobbies with about 6 players. If you try to load it into a larger multiplayer server, you're going to have very long load times, but with 32 gigabytes you should be just fine, especially if you have a good CPU. Okay, moving on to GPUs. Again, you don't need the latest and greatest card out there. I went from a 2080 Ti to a 3080 Ti and barely noticed any differences. I have buddies still using 2080 Ti's with no issues. Okay, and to finish this part out, we're going to talk about storage. So I highly recommend putting DCS on an SSD, as this will load the game so much quicker compared to an HDD. I also highly recommend getting an SSD or M.2 just for DCS alone. It's suggested to be 1 terabyte or larger, as DCS takes up a lot of space and has big updates. For example, the Colo map is over 100 gigabytes just by itself. At first, I ran a 500 gigabyte SSD and quickly realized I needed something bigger, so that's why I'm recommending this. Okay, so part 3, picking your first aircraft. This is probably going to be one of the longer portions of the video. So I'm going to assume you already have a favorite aircraft in mind. I recommend before spending your money that you watch some gameplay videos, tutorial videos, and look at the manual or Chuck's guide to see if that's something you actually want to invest your time into. Okay, the first thing I'm going to talk about is going to be full fidelity aircraft. There's more to these than just going out for your first solo ride. What do I mean by that, you may ask? And this is when I tell you what I mean. Like I said at the very start of the video, this is not an arcade game like War Thunder or Ace Combat. Every button and switch in that virtual aircraft does exactly what it will do in the real aircraft. You're going to need to know how to actually start your aircraft, which could be a 10-minute process, and then how to align your navigation system, which could be another 10 minutes. That could have been one match in War Thunder or one mission in Ace Combat before you even got off the ground in DCS. If you're still not sure what to get, but you do know that you want to get into DCS, then look at the Flaming Cliffs aircraft. These are a low-cost alternative that is not full fidelity, but they can still perform with them. You could get 11 aircraft for $60, or a single aircraft like the F-15C for $15, or you could wait for a sale and they'll be even cheaper. Versus one full fidelity aircraft that could be $80, and you might not even end up liking that aircraft. Looking at you, Vigan. The Flaming Cliffs aircraft are also controlled with a handful of commands, so this is a much easier learning curve to get into DCS as well. There's also free mods out there, such as the A4 Skyhawk, which is insanely good. Okay, I really need to say this, I cannot emphasize this. This is not Pokemon. You do not need to collect every module. There's no hidden reward for collecting them all. Don't waste hundreds and hundreds of dollars like me and so many other players have just to fly the same few modules. I'm speaking from experience. I have so many modules I don't even look at. That's waste of money that could have gone into something else. Again, this goes back to doing your research and watching gameplay. I can make the Apache look super fun, but you might not even be able to get off the ground successfully. If you spend time and actually learn your aircraft in DCS, you can be super effective for 90% of gameplay, such as campaigns and multiplayer servers. For example, the Hornet can pretty much do it all. It's a jack of all trades, master of none. It could take off and land from a boat and from an airfield. It has smart and dumb weapons. It has really good sensors and is constantly being worked on, so it's always improving. Remember, there's always sales going on, so if you want to save money, wait a month or so. There's also the trial system if you're not using Steam. Okay, so part 4, Study Sim. Going back to the War Thunder comment, each aircraft in DCS has manuals with hundreds of pages going over how to use its sensors, and so on. The reality is this, you're not going to be instantly good at DCS. It's going to take you a few days, not 4 hours over a few day period, a legit 48 to 72 hours to understand and know your aircraft. And this could be even longer depending on how complex your aircraft is. Okay, so this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I recommend avoiding multiplayer to start. Just hear me out. I know you want to jump in the most popular server to show off your brand new shiny toy, but most likely you're going to crash before you even leave the ground. You're probably going to ruin other players' experience because you're going to keep crashing and crashing and crashing. So use the training section in the main menu to get a good foundation underneath you. Read the manual, download the manual, read it while you're on the toilet, watch YouTube guides. The more you understand and know your aircraft, the more rewarding the gameplay is going to be. Okay, so part 5 is going to go over the maps. So DCS comes with 2 free maps, which is going to be Caucasus and Marianas Islands. If you want to play another map such as Syria, you need to purchase that. If you plan on playing single player campaigns, they most likely will be using a different map that you need to purchase. I had to say this because it's been asked before, the campaigns do not come with a map. Just gotta put that out there. If you plan on spending a lot of time on multiplayer, before you buy a map, go look at the server list and see what's popular. There's a lot of maps out there, but most servers already run the same few maps, which is most likely going to be Caucasus because it's free, and Syria because it's the best overall map. It would really suck to buy a map like Nevada just to find out that nobody uses it. Okay, moving on to part 6, controls, HOTAS and pedals. So do you need a HOTAS to play DCS? The short answer is no, but it will give you the best overall experience. The fact is, you can play DCS with just your keyboard and mouse. From there, you can step it up and play DCS with an Xbox controller and be really good. I fly with people that only play with Xbox controllers and they outperform a lot of players with a HOTAS system. If you do want to use a controller, I'm going to link a channel that shows you the ins and outs of playing with a controller setup. So what is a HOTAS? It's short for hands-on throttle and stick. It's exactly what it sounds like. One hand's on the throttle and the other hand's on the stick. Both stations have controls on them that let you perform hundreds of commands without your hands leaving the stations. It's how real fighter pilots interact with their aircraft. Again, do your research and find out what works best for you and your budget. You don't need the $1,000 Gucci setup, especially if you're going to get into DCS for the first time. A really good starter HOTAS is going to be the Thrustmaster T1600M, which is as right now ranges between $130 to $250 US depending on your location. I've also seen these at my local Best Buy, so maybe it's readily available for you. I got a few buddies with this HOTAS system, and they have been using it for years with zero issues, and I also got a couple buddies with a $1,000 Wing setup, and they have issues every time they load into DCS. I personally recommend the Thrustmaster Warhog, which goes for roughly $500. This is what I've been using the whole time I've been playing DCS, and I have zero issues with it. In my opinion, this is honestly the jack of all trades, master of none of the HOTAS world. Also, there's third parties like VIII that provide aftermarket support for it as well. The HOTAS that I would avoid is going to be the Logitech X56 or X57. I have nothing against these. It's just most of the time when I see DCS players complain about having HOTAS issues, it seems to be coming from one of these two. Again, do your research and find out what works best for you. If you can afford the Warhog, that's going to be my go-to recommendation. Okay, so next we're going to talk about pedals. You need these in order to control the yaw input and nose wheel steering input of your aircraft. If you can't use pedals for a reason such as a disability, there's companies out there that have a HOTAS stick with a twist grip that act as a rudder pedal. But if you can use pedals, a good starter set will be the Thrustmaster TFRP pedals. They go for about $130 and work just fine. I've used these pedals for about 4 years and had no issues. I eventually upgraded to a VIII setup because I wanted to try something new. The only drawbacks I can think about with the Thrustmaster pedals is that your feet are pretty close together, which is not an issue until you want to go with like a center mount stick, and that's when it becomes uncomfortable because of how your legs are situated with how close your feet are together. But like I said, they are a pretty good starter setup. Okay, moving to part 7, which is going to go over head tracking. You 100% absolutely need head tracking in DCS. You need to be able to freely look around both inside and outside of your cockpit, either it's looking at a display or at the surroundings outside your aircraft. You can use a numpad or a mouse to act as a head tracker, but that means one hand is dedicated just for that. I personally have been using a Track IR setup and I can't see myself using anything else. It's affordable and you don't sacrifice or require any extra computer performance. Also with Track IR, if you have limitations to neck movement, you can set up profiles that amplify your head movement in the game, that way you can still fully look around. There's also many Track IR alternatives such as the D-LAN clip as well. Okay, so now we're going to talk about VR. So if you can afford to run VR, go for it. Over the last year, DCS has been improving and optimizing VR performance, and it's only going to get better. You absolutely do not need the Pimax to have a good VR experience. I have buddies with old Quest 2s, and they are doing just fine. Again, the modules will have requirements for VR performance recommendations. Okay, then there's going to be eye and face trackers as well. I'm not really well versed in this, so I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole, but there's options for both eye and face trackers. Again, this comes down to doing your own research and finding out what works best for you. Alright, moving on to part 8, early access and development times. The DCS business model is the early access model. DCS is a marathon and not a sprint, meaning development time takes a very long time, not 2 weeks, more like years. If you pay for an early access module, for example the Apache helicopter, you're pretty much testing the module and having to deal with constant changes. This early access business model means that a module can be in early access for years. The Hornet just left early access after almost 6 years. Alright, moving on to part 9, enhance your overall experience. If you only want to play single player, there's a bunch of campaigns you could buy, and there's also free downloadable missions from the user section from the DCS website. If you want to play with people online, there's a bunch of Discord communities available. You can find people to play with online, or you can find a mission squadron and play as a team and build that team cohesion. Part 10, recap. Things that I recommend. 1. Keep your budget in mind. Don't break the bank, you can always upgrade later. 2. Do your research on the module or modules that you want, the controls and head tracking method that works best for you. 3. Get the module you want and get the Syria map, as it's the best map out there. 4. Learn your aircraft so you can fully enjoy it. 5. Have fun. Hopefully you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please consider giving it a like so I know you enjoyed it. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.